Delivery man's unexpected act of kindness reveals a truth that transforms his life forever. Jack's alarm jolted him awake before dawn, the familiar buzz thundering through the stillness of his small apartment. Groggily, he swung his legs off the bed, a heaviness settling over him. The weight of economic hardship, his responsibilities as the sole provider for his aging mother and ambitious teenage daughter, Mia. The delivery truck awaited outside, a metal beast of burden, ready to whisk him off into another day that churned the same monotonous rhythms. Each morning felt less like a routine and more like a relentless grind. Yet he clutched the belief that hard work could somehow lead to a brighter future. As he drove down familiar roads, past sleepy storefronts yet to open, Jack couldn't shake the nagging unease clawing at him like a caged animal. Delivering packages was one thing, but delivering change felt terrifying, teetering on the brink of something he didn't know how to grasp. After all, who was he to challenge the system? His thoughts raced, chest tightening. Yet he was a father first, and Mia deserved more than what he could offer as just a delivery man. Today's first stop was at a law firm known for its ostentatious facade. He parked and approached the entrance, mentally preparing for another monotonous drop-off. Suddenly, he noticed an elderly woman struggling with two bulging bags of groceries. Her frail frame trembled, shoulders hunched, the sway of time weighing her down. It felt right to lend a hand. When he approached her, her weary eyes ignited with warmth that brushed against the coldness in his heart. "Here, let me help you with that," he offered, reaching for the heavier bag. "Thank you, young man," she replied, her voice trembling but grateful. As they walked, she began to share snippets of her life. Her brother, once a respected attorney, had been maligned by a system intended to serve justice. With each sentence, Jack felt a deepening connection to her pain, a longing to help that mirrored his own desperation. The weight of injustice had its own gravity, drawing him closer to the reality of what it meant to fight for a cause beyond his immediate world. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As he entered the law firm, Jack felt the oppressive atmosphere close in around him like a tight noose. The stories Judith shared echoed in his mind, each account another brick adding to the weight he carried. The sense of helplessness was suffocating. He wanted to stand up, to speak out against the injustices that chained them both to this grim reality. But what if stepping out of line cost him his job, his stability? What if digging deeper led to greater dangers for his family? Jack stood on the precipice of a choice, his heart pounding in uncertainty. The deeper he delved into Judith's case, the stronger the urge became to confront not just the institution, but himself. He grappled with conflicting emotions, a desire to champion the truth flanked by crippling fear. What if revealing this truth tangled him in a web he couldn't escape? What if he lost everything? As he uncovered secrets that resonated with his own struggles, he felt the storm of internal chaos rise. With every passing moment, the question loomed larger. Was he ready to expose a truth that could shatter the very world he battled to protect? And just when he uncovered a revelation that threatened to alter everything, his phone buzzed urgently, pulling him from the brink. The answer lay out of reach, the stakes climbing higher. Would he risk it all, or retreat back to the safety of silence? The screen of Jack's phone flashed with a familiar number, pulling him back from the edge of his thoughts. It was Mia. Her voice, a mix of excitement and urgency, cut through the fog of fear that had clouded his mind. "Dad, you won't believe what I just found out," she chirped, a rare brightness in her tone. Her ambition had always been a beacon of hope for Jack, illuminating his darkest hours. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked, trying to shake off the weight he felt pressing down on him. Her words tumbled out like an avalanche. "I've been researching college options. There's this scholarship program for young activists, and it's not just about academics. It's about making a difference in the community. I can apply, Dad." He felt a swell of pride mixed with concern. Mia had always been passionate about social justice, influenced by their discussions at the dinner table. Yet the implications of activism were fraught with risk. He wanted her to chase her dreams, but could he guide her, knowing that her aspirations could lead her into conflicts that might mirror Judith's brother's plight? Mia's enthusiasm dissipated his doubts, if only for a moment. "I think I can create a project about local injustice in our neighborhood. It doesn't just help me, it could help everyone." "Just be careful, Mia. You know how things can get," Jack cautioned, his mind already racing with thoughts of how to protect her. "Exactly. That's why I want to make this project. If I can show people what's wrong, maybe we can change it." Her voice carried a spark that ignited something within Jack, a reminder of the fire he had dimmed during years of laboring through life's unyielding grind. He glanced at the law firm's imposing building before slipping back behind the wheel, his heart thumping. Perhaps, amidst the suffocating weight of his own responsibilities, Mia could be the key to unlocking a path he'd been too afraid to explore. Driving away, Jack's thoughts ricocheted between fear for Mia's safety and the flicker of hope ignited by her ambition. She needed him to be strong, to navigate this evolving landscape not only as a father, but as someone who might be willing to face his own transformation. Jack parked next to the local coffee shop, the scent of roasted beans and fresh pastry mingling with the crisp morning air. He stepped inside, scanning the busy room filled with early risers, their faces etched with stories waiting to be told. Catching sight of a table by the window, a flicker of determination surged through him. He could start here, with small steps, maybe not in the realm of activism just yet, but in his profession. As he ordered a coffee, his mind shifted to Judith's case and the injustices she faced. What if he could leverage the connections he had within his delivery network? Maybe he could broach the topic. He could gather information, share it with Mia, and empower her project while easing the burdens of his fears. He felt like a soldier preparing for battle, heart racing, mind sharp. However, in that moment of clarity, Jack realized he would have to wrestle with the fear that gripped him. He could choose to remain in a world that offered comfort but stifled potential, or he could step into the uncertainty, risking everything for a cause larger than himself, starting with Judith's quest for justice, and perhaps expanding into Mia's scholarship ambitions. "Dad!" Mia's expressive voice crept back into his consciousness, breaking through the armor of contemplation. "You've got to help me with this project. I can't do it without you." Her plea stirred a latent strength within him, and for the first time he pondered. Was he ready to step into the light despite the shadows looming over? With resolution settling in, Jack thought about his next steps. Perhaps this was the moment he needed to confront his own fears and fortify his resolve. But just as he took a sip of his coffee, a realization crashed over him. Engaging in this would mean inevitably confronting those who wielded power unjustly. The stakes were no longer just personal, they transcended myriads of lives. Mia needed a father willing to face the truths hidden beneath everyday facades. Could he become that father? Could he become the man he had always hoped to be? With those questions swirling, Jack made his decision, but the echo of the law firm still haunted him. What was hidden beneath the surface at that imposing edifice? What secrets lay waiting to be uncovered, and what consequences would follow?
His heart raced, drawing him one step closer to an irreversible change as the door to his past began to creak open. The truth wasn't just a burden, it was a catalyst, and Jack was ready to ignite the flame. Jack felt a sense of purpose intensifying within him as he departed the coffee shop. The gravity of his decision looming before him, each step echoing both anticipation and trepidation. He didn't have a detailed plan, just the flicker of intention that prodded him onward. Back in the car, memories of the law firm flooded his mind. The sterile hallways lined with polished wooden walls loomed over him like towering sentinels, promising safety, yet ensnaring all who entered in an endless cycle of predictability and fear. He had blended into the firm for years, always avoiding contentious decisions. But Mia's call stirred a sense of rebellion against complacency. As he navigated through traffic, Jack deliberated over his approach to Judith's case. Connecting with her, advocating for her, would require not only strategy, but also his deepest commitment, an acceptance of consequences that could ripple beyond just his life. The thought of challenging the very system he worked within unnerved him, but that discomfort was a welcome reminder of the stakes involved. Arriving at the firm, he paused to gather himself, soul-searching. He hadn't fully stepped out of the shadows yet, always projecting an image of certainty and control. But beneath the surface, he questioned everything: his career, his choices, even his willingness to protect Mia from an unjust world. This had to change. Inside, Jack made his way to his office, glancing around at his colleagues engaged in their familiar routines. They were all playing it safe, comfortable in the haze of predictability. But he sensed a greater desire stirring, a yearning to advocate for someone who couldn't fight for themselves. He could no longer remain a passive observer. Instead of diving into paperwork, he called a meeting with his supervisor, a figure named Roger, a man known for treading carefully around contentious issues. Jack felt everything hinge on this moment, his palms beginning to sweat despite the professionalism demanded of him. How could he articulate his desire to challenge the existing system without losing his footing? "Roger, I need to discuss something important," Jack started, his voice steely despite the tremors of doubt that bubbled beneath. "I've been thinking a lot about Judith's situation, and I believe there's more at stake here than simply defending her case." Roger's gaze sharpened, an eyebrow raised. "More at stake. It's a straightforward case, Jack. We win or we lose. What do you want to dig into?" Those words pierced through Jack's veneer. Straightforward. How could anyone, especially someone like Judith, be deemed straightforward when their lives were riddled with complexities? This was a defining moment, the potential pivot point in his career. "I want to look deeper into this, investigate the circumstances of her past and how they tie into broader issues. We have a chance to address injustices, Roger. I know we can do more," he pressed, his conviction firming with each word. Roger leaned back, considering. "You realize this could jeopardize the firm's reputation, don't you?" His stomach tightened. Was this a dialogue filled with rhetoric or a real opportunity for change? "I understand that, but isn't that exactly why we have the opportunity to make a difference? To put ourselves on the line for something worthy?" Silence enveloped them as Roger mulled over the implications. Jack's heart thudded in his chest. Was he truly willing to cross this line? But he had already gone too far to turn back. He wanted change, for himself, for Judith, for Mia. "All right, let's explore this angle," Roger replied cautiously, a hint of intrigue breaking through his initial resistance. "But tread carefully, Jack. You know this world isn't forgiving." With newfound energy surging through him, Jack could feel the pathway to his transformation igniting. His mind raced with potential pathways unfolding before him. There would be risks, but for the first time in years, he felt alive, a rawness coursing through him, a flicker of the man he aspired to be. Yet, as the reality of his bold move settled, Jack confronted another wave of unease. What would be the consequences of his actions? Would standing up for justice reignite the past he had tried so hard to bury? He left the meeting, heart racing, uncertainty settling in around the edges of his resolve. What would his journey into the unknown reveal about himself? And could he safeguard Mia while embracing this path of confrontation? As he stepped into the bustling corridor, Jack realized it was but a single decision in a long journey ahead, a journey that would challenge him at every corner. He could already feel the shifting tides of destiny at his back. Little did he know that soon he'd face questions not just about others, but about who he fundamentally was as a man. When had he truly confronted the life he wanted, and how far was he willing to go to discover it? Jack's enthusiasm was tempered by an undercurrent of uncertainty that hung heavily in the aftermath of his meeting with Roger. The firm around him continued its mechanical rhythm, colleagues busily dashing between conference rooms, gripping coffee cups like lifelines. He had taken a decisive step, yet he could feel the weight of potential backlash pressing against him. His office felt both exhilarating and suffocating. The stack of files on his desk seemed to mock him, remnants of his past, like shadows of a person who had often chosen the easy path. That person was still lingering, but now the allure of real advocacy beckoned. He had lit a spark, and the flicker of hope ignited determination within him. As he sorted through the papers for Judith's case, he found himself contemplating not just the legal strategy, but the sorrow underlying her circumstances. Jack made an active decision to research. There were community records, court documents, and news articles that spoke of systemic failures, not just her failures, but failures that affected many lives like hers. He was no longer a mere conveyor of legalese, but was about to become a voice that challenged the complacency that had formed around him. He turned to the computer, fingertips poised over the keys. This was more than advocacy. It was about bringing light into the darkness that cloaked so many unjust realities. The drive to unveil the truth surged within him, pulsing in rhythm with his heartbeat. His newfound perspective led him to delve deeper into Judith's case, combing through every minute detail with a critical eye. The hours stretched into an all-consuming endeavor that blurred the lines between professional obligation and personal mission. He reached out to NGOs and support groups that assisted victims like Judith, tapping into a network that could provide insights he had never considered. Unexpectedly, Jack found himself becoming a conduit for various voices, the distraught, the hopeful, the marginalized. He began to piece together not only Judith's story, but also the narratives of others who had faced similar struggles. His empathy flourished, layered with seeds of activism sown into his newfound awareness. As days passed, Jack struggled with the implications of his evolving role. Would he be met with hostility from the firm, or worse, from his colleagues when this cause compromised their image? Yet he couldn't turn back. The thought of mere compliance turned his stomach. Each moment's indecision felt like a betrayal, not just to Judith and Mia, but to the very fabric of who he wished to become. The stark reality was that stepping beyond the threshold of mediocrity would demand sacrifices. Facing Roger again, Jack grappled with the potential of backlash looming like a storm cloud overhead. Roger's cautiousness would be nothing compared to the ire of the firm's powerful partners if Jack's advocacy challenged their entrenched interests. That evening, as he prepared to leave the office, Jack glanced over at the framed picture of Mia on his desk. She had always encouraged him to stand for what was right, to be courageous. "What would you do in my shoes?" he whispered, seeking guidance from a silent partner rather than a decision-maker. The boundary between personal and professional life was becoming thinner. Jack willfully chose to embrace the tension. He needed to confront the looming questions about his identity, not just as a lawyer, but as a person dedicated to a cause greater than himself. And as he contemplated his evolving journey, a message from one of the NGOs popped onto his screen. The words written played like a drum, reminding him that sometimes an unexpected act of kindness could leave an indelible mark on the lives of others, and, in turn, on his own. Feeling a renewed sense of purpose, Jack steeled himself against the unknown. The time had come to face the conversation with Roger that would redefine his standing within the firm. Would he emerge as a risk-taker, or retreat back into the comfortable shadows of conformity? A knock on his office door startled him, and he turned to see Roger.
In the doorway, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk." Jack's heart raced as he nodded, taking a breath that felt heavier than before. The moment had arrived to confront everything he had been building towards. The gravity in the room was palpable as Roger stepped inside, closing the door with a deliberation that made Jack's skin prickle. Each tick of the wall clock seemed amplified, echoing the tension that blanketed the air. Roger's expression, a mix of curiosity and concern, only deepened Jack's apprehension. He braced himself, acutely aware that the conversation would shape not just his immediate career, but his very identity. "Jack," Roger began, his voice measured, "I received your proposal regarding Judith's case." Jack held his breath, mind racing with the implications. This was the moment that would either anchor him firmly within the firm's prevailing culture or propel him into uncharted waters. "I understand you want to bring a different approach," Roger continued, "but I need to know, what are you really prepared to do? This path can jeopardize not just your position, but the reputation of our entire team." The stakes felt like a heavy weight pressing down on Jack's shoulders. Yet, amidst the pressure, a fire flared within him. He could sense the duality of his circumstances, the risk of alienation against the promise of advocacy. "I'm ready to stand for what's right, Roger," he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "Judith represents numerous voices suppressed by the system. If we don't fight for her, we're just perpetuating the status quo." Roger's eyebrows furrowed slightly, skepticism mingling with intrigue. "This isn't just about one case, Jack. If you take this stance, you could face backlash from partners who prioritize profit over principle. You know how they think. They'll see this as a threat." "I've thought about that," Jack said, the words pouring from him like a wellspring. "But if I don't push back against complacency, what's the point of being a lawyer? Am I to simply facilitate injustice while pretending it's not my problem?" A silence stretched, thick with contemplation. Jack watched as emotions flickered across Roger's face. Was it fear? Understanding? A flicker of pride? In this moment, Jack recognized that he wasn't just articulating his sentiments. He was drawing lines in the sand, and Roger would either cross them or retreat. Roger leaned back, crossing his arms. "You're clearly passionate, but passion doesn't pay the bills or keep the firm secure." Each word dripped with caution, like a slow, relentless drizzle. "Consider what this could mean for your career. Can you afford to lose everything for a cause that might not even change the outcome?" Jack clenched his fists, feeling the heat in his cheeks. The truth was, he wasn't just fighting for Judith anymore. He was wrestling with his own longing for authenticity, a craving that had gnawed at him for too long. "I would rather risk my position and be proud of what I stand for, than remain silent and resentful." A calculating glimmer crossed Roger's eyes, but beneath the layers of his professional facade, Jack detected something softer, a flicker of recognition, perhaps? "You're walking a tightrope here, Jack. Just remember, the fallout may be more significant than you anticipate." Jack nodded, the weight of his resolve crystallizing. "I'm willing to risk it." In that moment, the distance between them shifted, and Jack could almost see the gears turning in Roger's mind. Did he sense Jack's evolution? Did he recognize a possible ally who might one day challenge the firm's culture from within? The conversation resumed, formalities and strategies flowing as Jack outlined his plan for Judith's case. But the tension that had preceded their exchange lingered, becoming an emblem of the confrontation he'd launched into his career. After their meeting, as Jack descended the stairs leading to the office entrance, he felt different, lighter and heavier all at once. The pressure of uncertainty remained, but it was now accompanied by a powerful sense of clarity. He was not just advocating for Judith, he was pushing against the very architecture of his life. Back at his desk, he sank into his chair, overwhelmed by the somber reality of his choice. As he gathered his thoughts for the next steps in assembling Judith's case, he knew one thing for certain. He was preparing to challenge the firm's ethos, starting a conversation that terrified and invigorated him in equal measure. Just then, an email notification pinged, drawing his attention. It was an invitation to speak at a legal seminar on advocacy and systemic reform. An unfamiliar thrill coursed through him. A chance to broaden his stance, to influence beyond the confines of his firm. The urgency of running the gauntlet ahead already began forming in his mind. Could this be the pivotal moment that finally set forth a new path, not just for Judith, but for himself? As he stared at the screen, pulses of possibility rushed through him, intertwining with the anxiety that clung like a second skin. With a newfound determination dawning on him, Jack clicked the link to accept. The way ahead was fraught with potential fallout, each step teetering between risk and rewards. Suddenly, he was acutely aware. He was now not just a lawyer, but a burgeoning advocate, prepared to carve a new identity from the fabric of advocacy itself. Yet, lurking in the shadows, he couldn't shake the unsettling weight of those who might stand against him. Partners, colleagues, anyone in the firm uncomfortable with the path he was charting. He had opened the door to conflict, both external and internal. With a long, steadying breath, he considered and resolved that the next step would be monumental. The time had come to face who he would become, and what he was willing to lose to find out. With a relentless buzz in the back of his mind, Jack dived headfirst into preparing for the seminar. Each day at the firm felt like an escalating tightrope walk, the stakes climbing higher as he balanced his usual workload with the demands of his new role as an advocate. The emails poured in, documents piled up. He was drowning, yet somehow the chaos invigorated him. Late nights became routine, and with every hour spent poring over case notes and legal precedents, an unexpected clarity emerged. He was no longer merely executing someone else's vision, he was forming his own. Excitement laced with dread surged in his veins as he drafted his speech, carefully choosing words that would underscore not just Judith's plight, but the broader fight against complacency within the legal system. As he crafted his message, he aimed for authenticity, seeking to channel the urgency he felt for change. But doubt seeped in like smoke. Who was he to challenge long-held beliefs? What if his coworkers labeled him a rebel? Would their skepticism extinguish his passion? Yet, with every challenge he encountered during preparation, a hidden strength surfaced. He began recalling those moments, his time volunteering at a legal aid clinic, the flicker of hope in a client's eyes, the ache of feeling powerless against a system that often favored the privileged. One evening, as he sat at his cluttered desk, the familiar scent of stale coffee mingling with the fresh air wafting through the cracked window, something clicked. A fervent whisper in his gut urged him onward. He had a voice, and it was time to use it. He pushed through the anxiety, drafting compelling narratives about those he aimed to represent, their stories unaddressed until now. When the day of the seminar arrived, clarity gave way to anxiety. Standing backstage, he inhaled deeply, his heart racing as he waited for his introduction. The audience, legal professionals, students, advocates, awaited behind the curtain like an ocean of judgment. Was he truly prepared for this? Would they embrace his message or reject him?
As he stepped into the spotlight, the bright lights cast a warm glow, yet they felt like a spotlight of scrutiny. Jack's voice wavered initially, but beneath the surface tremors, a steadiness emerged. He spoke passionately about Judith's case, recounting not just the facts, but the turmoil of injustice that had marked her life. He connected the dots between her story and the systemic failures that perpetuated suffering. With time, he felt walls break, not only within himself, but in the audience as well. He saw nods of agreement and expressions of contemplation. Each sentence crafted with intention bolstered his resolve. He was met with apprehension, yet here he was, challenging the very fabric of the status quo. After his speech, while mingling with attendees, Jack encountered a senior partner from his firm, a figure he had long regarded as a litmus test for conventional thinking. Rather than the reproach he expected, the partner leaned closer and whispered, "You might just have something there, Jack." The weight of that comment sent a rush through him, a validation he hadn't anticipated. However, as the applause faded and conversations blossomed, a shadow darkened. His thoughts. He knew the path ahead would not be straight or easy. The supportive comments felt like a double-edged sword. Would those newfound allies be enough when the firm's entrenched culture pushed back against his ideals? Days passed, and Jack returned to the firm with newfound determination, but also a gnawing sense of apprehension. Judith's case was steadily advancing, yet every ambitious step he took propelled him closer to confrontation with those who might oppose his efforts. In a hushed conversation with a colleague later that week, he learned of a central meeting where the firm would outline its strategies for the upcoming year. Rumors circulated that anyone advocating for social reform could face repercussions. As Jack stood there, the turbulence of fear and resolve began to intertwine within him. Could he truly impact the firm without jeopardizing his career? The conflict was brewing, and he sensed the imminent confrontation that would shape him moving forward. With his resolve hardening, he gazed at the horizons of potential outcomes ahead. Whatever awaited him, acceptance, backlash, or something in between, he felt an unmistakable pull toward the truth he now carried within him. How far would he be willing to go to protect not just Judith, but every voice that went unheard? The glimmer of impending conflict loomed as he prepared mentally for the upcoming meeting. The moment of truth was nearing. Jack sat at his desk the next day, staring at the files piled in front of him, the dim light flickering above him like a metronome counting down to his impending confrontation. He had always prided himself on being adaptable, able to juggle cases while pleasing clients and supervisors alike. But now, that duality felt like a mask he was ready to remove, albeit with a tremor of fear lacing his thoughts. He reflected on the partner's comment from the seminar. It echoed in his mind, but the initial thrill of validation was quickly clouded by doubt. Was this really enough support to stand firm? A shiver ran down his spine as he considered the consequences of becoming a target. The thought sent him spiraling into introspection, yet it also ignited something deeper. His desire to effect change was becoming more pronounced than his instinct to play it safe. The upcoming meeting approached, weighing heavy on his shoulders. The anxiety swelled in him, but it was mingled with a sense of purpose that had grown since his speech. He couldn't shake off the memory of Judith's face, filled with despair, yet sparked by hope as he recounted her story. Each detail lingered in him, forming a resolute path he was now willing to walk. As he entered the meeting room, he stole glances at the faces of his colleagues. He discerned the usual expressions of indifference, some veering toward disdain as the partners convened at the front. Jack clenched his fists, feeling the pressure build. This was no longer just about a single case. It was about a movement within him, a growth. That demanded recognition. The discussion began, traditional and uninspired, as everyone reveled in projections and forecasts. Jack's heart raced as he listened, feeling the swell of frustration rising into his throat. Their strategic focus felt shallow, the words almost mocking in light of what he had witnessed working the legal aid clinic. With each passing moment, the urgency within him grew. When the time came to propose ideas, Jack cleared his throat, the sound reverberating through him like a blockade being dismantled. "I think we need to reevaluate how we approach our social responsibility," he said, his voice steady but quaking with the weight of vulnerability. He proceeded cautiously, unraveling his thoughts on Judith's case and presenting his vision for advocacy that would reshape their firm's direction. Immediate silence followed. He could feel the eyes of his colleagues bore into him, a mix of surprise and skepticism. The partners' expressions shifted from confusion to intrigue, yet he noted the underlying tension sharpening the air. Heart pounding, Jack forged ahead, fueled by a sudden rush of righteous indignation. We are in a position to not just represent the powerful, but to fight for those who have no voice. It's time we take that seriously. He hit pause, a cacophony of uncertainty swirling inside him, but he felt the tide beginning to shift as a few colleagues leaned closer, their interest piqued. The senior partner he'd spoken with before raised an eyebrow, perhaps momentarily intrigued by Jack's audacity. But he soon noticed another partner shifting in discomfort, arms crossed tightly over his chest. Tempers flared as a debate erupted, pitting Jack's emerging vision against long-cherished values. Dismissive comments from higher-ups fueled internal strife. He could feel the weight of professional tradition pushing back against his ideals. In that moment, Jack felt the stakes of his belief escalate. Could he withstand the likely backlash from those who valued consistency over ethical evolution? His heart raced as a cascade of conflicting thoughts descended upon him. He could either withdraw, allowing the flood of fear to consume him, or push further, risking everything he had built for a calling he now felt was paramount. Facing scrutiny weighty enough to crumble the strongest wills, he hesitated for just a heartbeat. Two powerful urges clashed within him. With focus solidifying, he realized this was the moment he had been preparing for, the catalyst for authentic growth. Would he retreat into safety, or press onward into an uncertain future? Each scenario flashed before him like a strike of lightning. The air ignited, the meeting evolving into a battleground of ideologies. And Jack? He realized that this was where he could either begin to construct a new professional identity or allow fear to win, trapping him forever in complacency. He straightened his posture, ready for the words that would define his path. "I need to know what I'm willing to risk. What are any of us willing to risk for change?" In that instant, everything fell silent once more. As he awaited their replies, he understood the pull of potential transformation rested not only in their hands, but within his own. The reality of his choice loomed. Would he emerge from this room a changed man, or stay tethered to the security of silence? The moment of decision had arrived, and so had the gravity of implications that would unfold from it. The silence hung heavily, a palpable awareness of the gravity behind Jack's inquiry. All eyes were locked on him, but he focused on the senior partner at the head of the table, whose expression guided the unfolding tension. The partner opened his mouth, perhaps to dismiss Jack again, but instead he paused, seemingly weighing the unrest that Jack had unearthed within their ranks. "Change can be daunting," the senior partner finally began, albeit cautiously. "But it's also necessary. I appreciate your candidness, Jack." The compliment felt like both a victory and a challenge. Jack felt a rush of adrenaline, yet it mingled with anxiety at the unpredictable nature of such validation. Another partner seized the moment, though. "What you're proposing, Jack, could alienate some of our biggest clients. You have to know that this isn't just about ideals, it's a business, and our bottom line is at stake." The words slammed against Jack, a stark reminder of the precarious balance of his proposition against the stable foundation he had trained to preserve. Jack inhaled sharply, processing the implications. He had always thought that the moral obligations of law were intertwined with its execution, but here lay the challenge laid bare. It wasn't just a moral dilemma, it was a commercial one. Could he reconcile these competing truths without losing the essence of his vision? "What you're asking for is noble, Jack," another voice chimed in, one he hadn't anticipated from both the junior associates and from Esther, an attorney known for her quiet determination. "But how will we sell it? We need actionable steps, something concrete to present." He should have expected this pushback, but part of him was taken aback by this unexpected support, a glimmer of hope amidst the rising tide of dissent. This meant other colleagues were equally frustrated and perhaps ready to explore a new direction. Taking a deep breath, Jack felt the collective energy shift subtly. "Perhaps we can start with a pilot initiative, a project where we demonstrate our commitment without jeopardizing existing relationships. A small step towards larger change," he articulated, hopeful that pragmatic suggestions might quell concerns while also reinforcing his desire for growth. Skeptical glances exchanged among the partners signaled his thoughts were not yet solidified in their minds. The atmosphere remained charged, and for the first time, Jack had the sense that he was not alone in his quest for ethical reform. He felt emboldened, a sense of agency rekindling a light within him. "I can work on the framework of such an initiative," Jack continued. "We can choose a case or charity, something visible, to show our support."
For underrepresented voices while still generating a conversation with our clients about expanding our approach. As he spoke, he felt more animated, almost reckless with the risk of further intrusion into their established structure. He felt that same fire ignited by Judith's experience, her struggle, and his own call to honor that plight. "Enough talk about the risks," Jack said, gesturing passionately. "Let's focus on the potential impact, not just on our firm, but on our community, on real people. Isn't that why we entered this field?" The meeting room buzzed with charged murmurs. Jack couldn't tell if the discourse was shifting away from dissent, or if it was merely a reflection of the storm he had ignited within himself and his peers. The weight of their attention began to feel less like scrutiny and more like a gathering force. Now came the moment for him to confront his own inner battle more decisively. Could he lead this charge, despite the potential backlash from those who would uphold the traditional hierarchy? The doubts that crept in sought to undermine his optimism. Jack could feel the shadow of fear looming, yet the glimmers of potential change ignited something fierce. It was the delicate weave between courage and vulnerability. The question replayed in his mind. Was he ready to stand tall amid dissent? Or was embracing this risk going to plunge him deeper into the abyss of uncertainty? As the conversation swelled, a mutual tension began to shape into a blossoming opportunity. Jack could sense his allies coloring the fears of his opponents with the vision he passionately laid out, sparking the glimmer of necessary change. Yet above all his hopes, another nagging thought thudded against the pulse of his heart. What would happen when he forced these changes into a rigid structure? Jack hadn't just thrown caution to the wind. He had crossed the threshold into a world where he would need to navigate the fallout head-on. His reflection twisted in that moment. The aftermath of this meeting could alter everything, much more than he could humbly grasp. Out of this realization emerged a fundamental truth. Uncertainty was a powerful ally, igniting a courageous resolve that would test the very core of his character. Leaving the meeting room, Jack had to confront another truth. The urgency within him was guiding him to change. But could he endure the flame it ignited without getting burned? In the following days, as he prepared to present his ideas further, Jack's resolve would be tested not just by the firm, but also by the forces within himself. Would he find the courage to bear the weight of advocacy, or would he find himself swallowed by the maw of expectation, clawing for the clarity he so desperately sought? The following morning was bathed in a light that felt almost surreal.
Jack stood at the window of his apartment, caffeine coursing through his veins, ready to embrace whatever the day would throw at him. He recalled the urgency of the previous meeting, the way
it had sparked not only passion, but also deep-seated fears. The conversation had transformed into a primal dance between ambition and conformity. As he donned his suit, he couldn't shake the knot of anxiety settling in his stomach. The scattered affirmations from his colleagues felt like fleeting winds against the tidal wave of doubt that loomed ahead. A sector of his mind whispered that perhaps he was stepping onto a battlefield decorated with risks he had yet to fully understand. Jack arrived at the office earlier than usual. The atmosphere felt different than the tumult of the previous week, as if the weight of change had not only settled on him, but also on those around him. The glow of the fluorescent lights contrasted sharply with the pensive faces of his colleagues, each caught up in their own internal struggles. The ambiguity of the firm's direction lingered in the air like an unfinished conversation. His thoughts were jagged, a mix of self-doubt and determination, when Esther approached him, her presence a soothing balm amidst the chaos. "I've been thinking about what you proposed," she began, her voice steady but bright. "Let's draft that initiative together. I think if we present a strong framework, we can win over some of the skeptics." Jack felt a spark ignite within him. It was a validation that transcended mere words. "You're right," he replied, lowering his guard just enough to let a genuine smile form. Together, they huddled over the conference room table, whiteboards strewn with sketches of ideas and heartbeats of hope. As they navigated their way through potential projects, it was clear that the synergy between them was more potent than he had anticipated. Yet with each strategic step they planned, Jack was marked by the gnawing realization that self-doubt was still his greatest adversary. He wondered if he was ready to field the inevitable resistance that would emerge when the firm convened again to discuss the framework. The thought of facing the more formidable partners conjured scenes of past failures, moments when he had faltered under pressure despite the best of intentions. As the days passed, Jack's focus narrowed to honing not only the proposal, but also his own voice. He began engaging with colleagues, gathering feedback and perspectives, inviting them into the conversation instead of treating it as merely a presentation. Each interaction demanded more courage as he probed the depths of their concerns, but also illuminated the common threads of desire for evolution. While drafting the initiative, he discovered something unexpected: the power of vulnerability in leadership. Standing firm did not equate to being unyielding. Perhaps, he thought, the path to authentic advocacy wasn't about obliterating opponents, but rather weaving a tapestry of shared fears and aspirations, transforming the very nature of dissent into dialogues. On one particularly long afternoon, as Esther stepped out for a break, Jack sat alone in the quiet room, allowing himself to breathe. The drafts before him reflected more than a mere proposal. They embodied a piece of his evolving idealism fused with the realities of the marketplace. He realized he wasn't just advocating for change, but also unearthing deeper truths about himself, a revelation that felt daunting yet liberating. But as he meticulously calculated every element, a sinking dread returned. With each iteration, he reminded himself of the pushback he might face from the partners. They were comfortable in their routines, shielded by years of tradition. Would they dismiss his bold strides as mere idealism? Or might they begin to see shadows of potential buried within their conventional walls? The clock ticked relentlessly as the day of the presentation approached. The growing uncertainty began to resonate within him like a resounding echo. Jack knew he had to brace himself, to confront the fears that had lain dormant too long. It was a moment of truth, not just about the proposal, but about the self he was becoming. As he gathered his papers, ready to refine his message, the gravity of his fear began to coalesce into raw determination. Perhaps the true measure of his success lay in not just the acceptance of the initiative, but in who he was willing to become in the process. And in the depth of his thoughts spiraled a deeper, burning question. Was he prepared to become the leader he envisioned, or would he remain shackled by the chains of his own reservation? With these reflections looming, the clock inched toward the decisive meeting, signaling that the time for reckoning was close at hand. The meeting room stretched before Jack like a battleground, chairs arranged neatly as if to await a discussion that would either illuminate or shadow his professional aspirations. As he stepped inside, the air crackled with anticipation, a collective tension echoing from the gathered partners. Jack felt the weight of his proposal pressing against his chest, but steeled himself for the challenge ahead. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, the steadiness of his voice surprising even himself. With each word, he felt the simmering energy from the previous weeks ignite within him. He laid out the initiative with clarity and poise, painting a picture of the synergy between social responsibility and the firm's potential for growth. He spoke passionately about not just advocating for Judith, but for countless others impacted by systemic injustices. His narrative wove through the room, drawing nods of acknowledgement, though he could still sense the division forming among the partners. As Jack articulated the need for the firm to evolve, he noted Roger's face, a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "Jack, I admire your enthusiasm, really," Roger interjected, his tone measured. "But with initiatives like these, how can we ensure it does not compromise our profitability?" Jack inhaled deeply, reminded of the initial fear he had felt when confronting this very question. "Profitability is essential, Roger, and I respect that. But what if we could foster new relationships with clients who share our commitment to social justice? We leverage our reputation to propel them forward while keeping our core values intact. Clients are increasingly drawn to firms that demonstrate an awareness of the world's inequities." The room buzzed with murmurs, a chorus of responses waiting to unfold like petals of a reluctant flower. As Jack continued to unfold the layers of his proposal, he recognized the flickers of intrigue dancing in some partners' eyes. A realization dawning on him: the array of worlds he could bridge depended on harnessing that curiosity, integrating their apprehensions with his ideals. But as he pushed on, he faced opposition. The voices that emerged were sharp, rooted in the fear of navigating uncharted waters. A senior partner stood and spoke, an air of authority cloaking his demeanor. "Jack, you have great vision, but we cannot risk damaging our relationships with existing clients. Change is not always embraced, especially when it threatens the status quo." Jack felt the tension spike. It would have been easy to recoil in the face of dissent, but he felt a surge of determination beneath the surface. What if we're already losing clients because we're not adapting to their evolving expectations? This is an opportunity not just to challenge norms, but to shape the future of the firm in a way that incorporates progressivism and profitability. He countered, the confidence in his voice ringing true. As the partners exchanged glances, Jack sensed a stirring brewing within the room. People were beginning to listen, and he was ready to see this through. He reeled off metrics gleaned from extensive research, case studies from firms pioneering similar initiatives, and testimonials from clients eager for partnerships on socio-ethical endeavors. He could feel the tides advancing, the pulse of possibility growing strong. However, just as momentum gathered, a familiar voice rang out from the back. "Esther." "Jack is right. We need to consider the long-term vision of our firm. It's not enough to simply survive. We should aspire to lead. Our survival hinges upon our adaptability. If we can champion advocacy, we can redefine our market position." With her support, Jack felt emboldened. The conversation shifted. Each partner began to express thoughts laden with the weight of their own experiences, their doubts swirling with a newfound hope.
In that moment, Jack stopped to ponder, not just about the initiative, but who he was evolving into amidst this dialogue. The shadows of fear began to wane, replaced by a sense of clarity weaving through his identity. As he navigated through the dialogue, Jack began to cotton on to the significant irony laid bare. Change often sprouts in the most uncomfortable of places. And now, this was his place. The meeting reached its climax as the senior partner returned to the conversation. "We're a traditional firm, Jack, but perhaps it's time we reconsider our direction," he conceded, the words heavy and deliberate. "If we could craft a proposal that reflects both growth potential and accountability, we could take a leap." The culmination of that exchange sent a rush through Jack. He could feel the shift, the collective courage that grew beyond just him. The realization began to land that they were standing on the cusp of breaking cycles written in old ink, dabbling in the creation of something outlandish yet necessary. As Jack readied to offer a framework that included steps to transition the firm into a community-conscious entity, a barrage of ideas flowed, sparking creativity among the partners. The conversation erupted with possibilities, laughter cutting through previous tension. It became clear this was a transformative moment, one that resonated deep within Jack. He realized the essence of true advocacy wasn't only in speaking truths to power, but in embodying the courage to bridge understanding between oneself and another. By the end of the meeting, they had agreed to pilot Jack's proposal, an initiative that included collaboration with local community organizations, mentorship programs representing underprivileged voices, and advocacy training for junior attorneys. The partners collectively acknowledged a burgeoning excitement, warming Jack's heart. Walking out of the meeting room, he felt accomplished, the victory of doubt transitioning into affirmation sprawling across his chest. More than that, he felt an expansive sense of belonging to something greater than himself. Jack was no longer just the delivery man. He was an advocate, a man who dared to dream, and in doing so, transformed not only his career, but instilled faith within others. The journey wasn't merely about changing the legal fabric. It was about building the version of himself that gritted against fear, embracing vulnerability as he sought purpose. As Jack returned to his office, something inside him glimmered, a rooted confidence that propelled him forward. The truth was no longer a burden to bear alone. It had become a collective journey of reimagining what they could achieve together, grounded in shared courage. Jack had achieved not only a significant transformation in his professional landscape, but had also wrestled with his fears, proving to himself that he was dedicated to becoming the change he sought. And that was a victory far greater than the changes within the firm. It was a realization that brought him home, even beyond the walls of the office. As the sun began to dip below the horizon outside his office window, a sense of completeness filled his being. Jack felt a profound commitment to both his role and the impact he aspired to facilitate, both bearing remarkable responsibilities, yet releasing unparalleled optimism. If you want to continue following Jack's inspiring journey and witness more emotional, transformational stories like his, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support to our channel. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm that helps us bring you more life-changing content. We want to hear your reactions. Comment below your thoughts and theories about Jack's journey. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Join us in spreading the message of personal growth and transformation. Jack had achieved not only a significant transformation in his professional landscape, but had also wrestled with his fears, proving to himself that he was dedicated to becoming the change he sought. And that was a victory far greater than the changes within the firm. It was a realization that brought him home, even beyond the walls of the office. As the sun began to dip below the horizon outside his office window, a sense of completeness filled his being. Jack felt a profound commitment to both his role and the impact he aspired to facilitate, both bearing remarkable responsibilities, yet releasing unparalleled optimism. If you want to continue following Jack's inspiring journey and witness more emotional, transformational stories like his, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support to our channel. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm that helps us bring you more life-changing content. We want to hear your reactions. Comment below your thoughts and theories about Jack's journey. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful conclusion. Join us in spreading the message of personal growth and transformation.